does intermittent fasting work? What are we talking about? What for, right? Let's think in terms of, for fat loss. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that's the best goal or that's the best tool to use to achieve fat loss. Now, if it's a spiritual thing, if it's a religious thing, of course, do you, right? I'm not saying don't intermittent fast, right? There's a bunch of spiritual and religious practices that utilize it. And here's where I think that bridge of the two, right? Fat loss and the religion side of it come together, of the habits that it builds, right? Because if you think of the people who are doing it for religion, really are spiritual practices, it's a way of disconnecting, of showing yourself that you do not need the food, and that also when you come back to it, how thankful you are for it. And then you take that into the daily life of the person who's just doing it for fat loss. And I believe I look at it as that same concept of the habits that it's building within that person. Not necessarily the fact that it's just shedding weight off your body. Right now, the ways that it is working in that sense is, you're not eating. Oh, yeah. We're back for another episode of the AXEARE Collective Cast. I'm your host, Devante Erlinson. I am a wellness coach, nutrition instructor for NCI Nutrition Coaching Institute, and also started this whole journey as a personal trainer. So I took that all, packaged it together, and now I essentially call myself a wellness coach because, yes, I do help people dial in their nutrition, set up nutrition plans to be successful long-term, fat loss, muscle gain, whatever it may be. I also ensure they have the training to go along with their nutrition. But of course, I'm crazy if I'm not talking about lifestyle factors. So there's a lot that goes into what I do on a day-to-day basis. But here at the AXEARE Collective Cast is my way of giving back, right? I know not everybody wants to hire a coach out there, but there's quite a bit of information that needs to be distilled and brought down to a level that makes sense for the individual, right? And that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. So if you're not already, shameless plug to us over at the AXEARE Collective community. If you're not a part of it already, check out the show notes below. You can come join us. Really, it's a free community for you to join a band of people who are like-minded when it comes to fitness, health, and wellness. People who want to make change and to be the best versions of themselves, for their families, for the kids that they have, whatever it may be. We're all trying to get to that point. It's a lot easier when we have a group of people with us. Now, what I'm doing in this group is I'm dropping live trainings, guides. We got other free resources. Plus, I drop the podcast there, and I even have the biggest snippets, the biggest takeaways from it. And then we're also able to have conversations. You can ask me questions, and you got direct contact with me. So if you want to check that out, please feel free to go below. But let's get out of there and let's get into what we're doing today. So I'm going to kind of keep things quick today because I do have client training. I'm blessed to be able to go train a client, and then I get to go play ball with that client, come home, do some training myself, hang out with the family, kick it for the rest of the day. So I want to get this done. Now, what are we talking about today? Well, we are talking about how sleep can boost your gains. That's right. That's what we're getting into. But before we get into it, you already know, we got to hit it with our weekly Does It Work? That's right. Does it work? Well, what are we talking about this week? Intermittent fasting. That's what. Now, this is a really hot topic, and I think it has been for a long time. And there's merit to it because people see success when they do it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But does intermittent fasting work? What are we talking about? What for, right? Let's think in terms of, for fat loss. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that's the best goal or that's the best tool to use to achieve fat loss. Now, if it's a spiritual thing, if it's a religious thing, of course, do you, right? I'm not saying don't intermittent fast, right? There's a bunch of spiritual and religious practices that utilize it. And here's where I think that bridge of the two, right? fat loss and the religion side of it come together, of the habits that it builds, right? Because if you think of the people who are doing it for religion, really are spiritual practices, it's a way of disconnecting, of showing yourself that you do not need the food, and that also when you come back to it, how thankful you are for it. And then you take that into the daily life of the person who's just doing it for fat loss. And I believe I look at it as that same concept of the habits that it's building within that person. Not necessarily the fact that it's just shedding weight off your body. Right now, the ways that it is working in that sense is, you're not eating, right? That's as simple as that. When we think of intermittent fasting in the sense of fat loss, well, we're just simply not eating. We're not eating a meal. Because for me, I'm somebody who's trying to gain muscle, gain weight, gain strength. I need to be eating in a surplus. Intermittent fasting is essentially just skipping a meal, right? So we're just not eating. And that's that. Well, be careful, right? Because if you go to the last episode, right? So what would that have been? Episode 7? No, 6. Sorry, this is episode 7, I believe. If you go back just one episode, though, from this one, I talk about how you can lose fat without focusing on fat loss. And I talk about this, the importance of food, how it actually fuels you, how we need it to avoid metabolic adaptation at low calories to where the body's thriving on a place that we don't want to. We're not even necessarily thriving, but living in a place that we don't want to be in all the time. So what do we do there? Well, check that episode out and it goes in detail. But for today, when we're thinking of this and we're thinking of, intermittent fasting, cool, I'm not eating, so that's why it works for fat loss. That's awesome. Also, too, I think it does help people because of digestive stress, right? If somebody is struggling mentally just to stay on a diet and just to stay on track and consistent with what they're doing and their training, their daily movement, their unbreakable foundations, any of that stuff, but they're dealing with digestive stress, that can cause a little bit of some mental distress as well on the adherence to what you're trying to do. So that's where I do see, intermittent fasting being a role to play in fat loss and helping somebody with their digestive stress, in turn, getting them to feel better, making better food choices and building better habits, right? That's another one. For me also too, if you think about this, right, let's say somebody who's dealing with binge eating and going way out of the rails on the weekends, and there's a lot there, right? There's a lot to do with binge eating that goes deeper than just the nutrition, right? There's a mental side of it, right? There's maybe some therapy that needs to be had, whatever it might be. But if you think about it, it is a way to adjust the overall caloric load. So if we know that somebody, yourself, if you know that you are somebody who is dealing with that, right? And go seek help if you are, or even if it's not necessarily a binge eating thing, but you just struggle on the weekends and you're eating a lot more. It is a way, once, go to the last episode again, refer to that one more time. And I talk about, the importance of getting to a point of understanding the amount of calories you're eating. And then we can break that down now and be like, okay, well, I'm going 2,000 calories more on the weekends, right? When we still want to work on the habit of getting away from that and eating healthier all week round, or just eating in a way that, I shouldn't say healthier, I'm going to say it better. We should try to work toward a way of eating in a way that aligns with our end goal, right? And the life that we want to live when we get there. So if that's the case, well, while we're building through the process of trying to work through the weekend binging and going overboard, now we have the calories from that, and now we can adjust. So I see intermittent fasting being a way to do that throughout the week of, okay, cool. Now I have a way to adjust my caloric load throughout the week so it kind of all evens out at the end of the day, while at the same time trying to work on those habits, of course. And then another way that I see it working is kickstarting your journey, right? When it comes to getting into fitness, health, wellness, any diet, nutrition journey, any training journey, I think, a lot of this stuff's hated on. And I'm one who used to do it. And I still have my hard stance on like, yeah, we shouldn't stick in one place for too long. But if it's a place for you to get on track and to get going and it helps you kickstart your journey, well, hey, maybe that's the kick in the ass you needed to get going. And now we're there. And now we can start to build in the healthy habit of, okay, hey, let's get away from just not eating that meal and get that meal in, because that extra meal can be so beneficial to you in your goals. Right. And that's all a process. So it takes time. So I regress. Does it work? Does intermittent fasting work for fat loss? In a way. I feel like not in the way that is portrayed out there. And it's not the thing that's going in and attacking more fat cells. It's not about the fact that, you're able to tap into that more when you're training, right? Yes, there is some science there, but when we look at that stuff, it becomes so minuscule, especially when we're looking at the general population as parents out there, people who are just trying to live a healthier life. I see it being more in a way of what I just said, right? All those little ways that I see it playing a role in fat loss, that's where I see it working per se. So I wouldn't say yes and I wouldn't say no. I say it depends, and I gave you all my answers on how. So that is this week's Does It Work? Let me know what you think. Hit me up. I'm curious. Come join us in the group and let's talk about it some more. Now, the topic of the day: how sleep can boost your gains. I'm really excited about this because myself, I need to really work on my sleep right now. I'm actually really excited to get this cast done because I have another cast to do after this, and I love my Pivotal Conversations podcast. If you haven't checked it out already, if you want to do me a favor, come check that one out. It's just more of a personal journey for me. I've kind of now labeled it more of like my video diary journal type of thing, where I'm just like talking through a lot of things that have gone in my head, things that I'm reading that are really helping me. And today I'm going to do something called tea time, where I'm going to sip on some tea and just talk about some stuff that's been going on. I recently lost a friend to drugs. It's third, fourth friend actually in a little short amount of time. So I'm dealing with that, but sleep hasn't been very good. I've been staying up, gaming with the homies, the skate homies, hopping on the game again for a little bit and all that. And not necessarily, I'm doing better coping mechanisms than I did before, right? Back in the day, it used to be go to the bottle, drink some stuff, stay up late, all that. But not the case anymore. I'm still sober, still kicking it, doing my thing. Now, when it comes to sleep, for me, I worry about it on the level of more than just fat loss and muscle building, just what it does for me overall, right? Mentally, it's key, right? I think we all know that. But what I want to talk about today is how sleep can actually boost your gains. And when we think about muscle building, I think the biggest thing you want to think about off the rip is recoverability, right? When we're trying to gain muscle, well, we should be strength training. And if we are strength training, we need to be able to recover. If I have skate homies out there listening in, right? If we're skating, we still want to be able to recover from those skate sessions. And during those skate sessions, we're still doing the same thing we're doing during a training session here in the gym. We're breaking down muscle. That muscle needs to be repaired. Even ligaments and tendons more so now. In skateboarding, with all the impact, absorption, and force production you're doing. So that's just a little skateboard rant for you, for my skate homies out there. But recoverability is key. Now, if we are not sleeping, those little workers in our body, right? I always explain it. These little worker bees in our body, they can't go to work doing what they need to do if we are not sleeping, right? The body's just not going to want to recover properly because it can't, right? It needs to be able to get into that deep sleep for those little workers to go to work repairing things all the way down to the cell. Now, that being said, sleep quality is key. I know not all of us can get that full 8 hours of sleep in, but I hope you can at least get 6, hopefully 7, and worrying about your sleep quality is key. And that's going to be really huge on your sleep hygiene, the things you're doing before you go to bed and all that. Now, as I said, recoverability is kind of number one on my list for muscle gain. And then I would also go into allowing nutrients to be properly absorbed, because when we're sleeping, we're allowing our body to actually go into that rest and digest state, right? Now, in that state, our body is going to be able to properly absorb the nutrients that we've been trying to eat throughout the day, right? And actually take it into the bloodstream and use it. So I'm really excited about this. Got to pause this real quick because I got a phone call coming through. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Like I said, I'm really excited because we got some cool stuff coming in. Might have found a house. We're house hunting right now. So I'm not going to say too much, but I am going to throw some positive vibes out there into the world and hope that, everything goes good. But as I was saying, when we do sleep and we're in that proper rest and digest, now that nutrients can be pulled into the bloodstream, and when we're trying to build muscle, of course we want that nutrients to be used. Even for fat loss, of course we want that nutrients to be used. And then, of course, looking at mental capacity. So if we're lacking sleep, we know we're going to take a hit to our actual cognitive performance, how we perform mentally. So what does that mean? Well, I know the days that I'm not sleeping, I just do not want to train. I do not feel good to train. My technique in the gym feels terrible, which might even throw me off the next day of training. And it's just like this cascade effect, right? So that never adds up to be a good thing. And then last on my list is the direct effect on leptin and ghrelin hormones. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And I have some stuff from some studies I'm going to share with you. But first, let's talk about how sleep can boost your gains when it comes to fat loss. The same thing kind of applies here, but first, I want to talk about the fact that if you're trying to achieve fat loss, and this also plays in for muscle building, if you're trying to achieve any of those things, and body recomposition, you're trying to change the way you look, trying to change the way you perform, your body will not want to make changes if it is stressed out and getting a signal that it doesn't want to, right? So if it's getting a signal that is so stressed from not sleeping and really being chronically underslept, it's not going to make the changes you want. And actually, it might start going in the reverse way that you want it to go, because it's trying to get away from any damage and stuff that could be getting created. And it's trying to figure out a way to combat that. So first and foremost, sleeping is going to make sure that the body is getting that proper rest. It's getting out of that stress state as much as possible. And it's, really starting at the crux of that, showing it that it's okay to make change. It's all right, body. Let's start shedding that fat. Let's start packing on that muscle. Let's start getting them gains. And that's what it's going to say. And then honestly, like the same things really do apply here as well, of allowing that nutrients to be absorbed with proper rest and digest, because when you're trying to lose fat, of course, same thing applies. We should be trying to move more. We should hopefully be at least starting to implement some form of training, getting into strength training, resistance training to some degree, and having that nutrients properly absorbed is only going to benefit you down the road, and really in the short term as well, right? It's going to help you with recovering day to day, feeling better energy-wise throughout the day when it comes to actually energy balance systems. Again, check out the last episode for that. We talked about it a little bit more in depth. And then, of course, like I said, that direct effect on leptin and ghrelin. Don't know why my camera seems to be overheating right now. I hope it doesn't turn off on me, but I'm going to try to bust this out before it does. Now, there's a study from 2008 on metabolic consequences of sleep and sleep loss. So I'm going to put this all in the show notes. If you want to check out the study, you can. Now, the first thing I'm going to share with you that talks about is how it goes on to say that sleep is a major modulator of hormonal release, glucose regulation, and cardiovascular function. So right there, okay, well, cardiovascular function, we don't want that to be down. We want to be able to perform and just get throughout our day, our training sessions, our cardio, and all that with no issues. We look at glucose regulation, so controlling your energy throughout the day. And then, of course, those hormones we're going to be talking about with leptin and ghrelin. Now, there is this thing called slow wave sleep that they refer to in this study, right? That kind of like REM sleep state where you're really in that like rest, digest, and recovery process. Now, during slow wave sleep, the anabolic growth hormone is released while the stress hormone cortisol is inhibited. So the risk of obesity is possibly linked to the effect of sleep loss on hormones that play a major role in the central control of appetite and energy expenditure, such as leptin and ghrelin, right? So then, now I'm going to explain this a little bit more, but then we go on to the study from 2022 on leptin and ghrelin, and it goes on to say ghrelin administration to human intra oh my gosh, I'm stuttering today. Ghrelin administration to human intravenously stimulates appetite and food intake and reduction in energy expenditure, accounting for increased weight gain. So, the secretion of ghrelin suggests that ghrelin may act as a signal for meal initiation, whereas its peak levels are associated with meal patterns. So there's this thing with this whole thing, and it's like there's this long form version of it, and that's responsible for the suppression of food intake and stimulation of energy expenditure. And then the short isoform, it actually mediates the transport of leptin across the blood-brain barrier. So the long isoform for leptin is actually highly expressed by the hypothalamus and other brain regions, where it induces satiety and considered as main leptin receptor. So let's break this down a little bit. First and foremost, that ghrelin hormone being that hormone that's really initiating the meal response, right? It's like, hey, when we're underslept, that ghrelin actually goes up. So that hunger response is harder to say no to. But then what happens as well is that leptin goes down, right? So when you think of the hypothalamus, right, in the brain, I just talked about cognitive performance with sleep. If we're not getting our sleep and cognitive performance is going down, well, boom. Now we're having that direct effect. And it's that I believe, I don't know. This is just me speculating based off of this and my knowledge so far as a coach and how long I've been in this. But to me, this is like, okay, well, that's where the leptin's being affected with sleep, right? It's being produced from the hypothalamus. The brain's being directly affected. And now that those feelings of satiety are harder to get away from. So we have an increase in that initial, hey, time to eat response. And then we also have a decrease in satiety. So now when we're eating, we don't feel as full. We don't have that response. And we're also getting more signals to eat more often. Boom. So why would I bring all that up? Well, like I was saying, when it comes to sleep, it can really boost your gains. I'm not going to lie. And right there, when we break it down in a science way, we can look at those two hormones and how they're affected, right? With that leptin decreasing and that ghrelin increasing, right? So now our ability to feel satiated turns down and the hunger cravings go up. And now it's hard, right? Fat loss is going to be a much harder journey. And even for me, muscle building is going to be a harder journey. For most of the people that I work with, muscle building is a harder journey in that way because now we just don't make better decisions. We're not making the decisions that really align with our goals in the end state in mind. So to round this all out, get your damn sleep. Like seriously, like get your sleep. I'm really talking to myself here too. Like I'm not preaching to the choir or anything. If I would be a hypocrite if I sat here and said, I don't need to work on this. I really do. And that's kind of my goal moving forward this week and the rest of my life is to make sure I'm no less than 6 hours. And I've been there, but I'm really trying to hit that 7-8 hour mark and be a little bit more aware of what I'm doing before I go to sleep. Right. So that's my rant today for you all and my little educational piece for all my parents out there, the people who are just trying to be the best versions of themselves for the people around them, for the people they love. That's how sleep's going to affect your gains. So please, if you ain't going to do it for yourself, do it for the people you love, but really you should be doing it for yourself. Get your sleep, right? And I'll do an episode all around sleep hygiene and stuff. Maybe, you know what? I'll take a note down and we'll do next episode on sleep hygiene just so it kind of plays off good. And that will be awesome. Sleep hygiene. So what I'll do then is I will get that planned out. You all will do your best to just try to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep this week, right? And come join us in the AXEARE Collective community. Right now it's just a Facebook group, but I am looking at, getting the website updated a little bit more to be in line with this as well. And, I don't really ask for much other than that. And I just give, right, with that community, even it's free. So if you could do me a favor, if you like what I'm saying here, if you sat around for the whole 20 some minutes, one, I appreciate you. And two, I really could use the help to share this out there, get it out there to everybody. I have a lot of fun sitting down. I'm doing this on a Saturday morning, chilling downstairs while kids and stuff are playing upstairs. But that's what it takes, right, to get where you want to go sometimes. And I already had my morning with them too, which I will say. So it's been a great morning. I'm happy I got to do this for you all now. So if you could share it on the stories, wherever you're listening, you usually can hit a little share button, share it to your socials, any of that stuff, or just talk about it with a homie. That always means a lot because, hey, if I was able to teach you anything and then you can take that in your life and then help somebody else, that means a lot to me. So, hey, I'm going to leave it there, guys, and I will catch you all next week on another episode of the AXEARE Collective Cast. Peace.